Okay. All right. Good morning, all. How's everyone doing today? Take that everybody's doing well. Um, oh, there we go. Hey. So guys, welcome. My name is Ugo, and this is Tickzon Mentorship Scheme. And today we've got for you guys Ready Set Uni, which ultimately is a workshop, an event that I set up to ensure to get you guys ready for university. Before we start, just a bit about us, and who we are, what we've done. So Tickzon Mentorship Scheme, our aim has been to turn hindsight into foresight, ultimately to kind of educate people, not exclusively young people, but most times we've kind of been focusing on young people on stuff that's not taught in schools, financial literacy, soft skills, social mobility, mental health, politics, majority of the things that essentially bridges the gap between what school teaches you and what you kind of need to kind of survive in society, and the big jumps that you guys eventually end up taking. For a lot of people, GCSE to sixth form was a big jump, but the jump from sixth form to university is kind of a completely different jump altogether, depending on where you've decided to go to, the course you're doing, the reasons why you did the course, and all of those things in general. So we've kind of been operating since 2018, and we've done various events in schools, youth clubs, with individuals, online workshops, and obviously we also have a YouTube, which is Mr. Tickzon, where you can follow us, and we'll put in more content. Some things that, because of we had to move the original date, which was 29th of July, because I was unwell, hence why we're doing this in an online space, but it'll still follow more of a workshopy vibe with a bit of content, but a lot of it will be done on the flip chart paper. There we go. Uh, and at any point in time, if you have a question, at any point in time, just raise your hand. If I'm doing something and I'm not listening to you, just speak out and then I'll address it, or you can put it in the chat. We fine with that? Any questions before we get going? Everyone can hear me, right? Oh, good, cool. Um, and last question before uh before I start off with all the spiel that I've got. So let me readjust these. Um, okay. So before all of that, I just want to know, is there any topics or any things that anybody wants me to make sure that I include or touch on, or areas that they're a bit more worried about when it comes to university, or just everything in general, results day and all of that jazz? If there's anything, you can drop it in the chat or you can say it out loud so I can note it down to make sure that I put some focus on it. Finance, cool. Well, Any other topics? What do you mean by contextual offers? Do you mean in terms of uni, in terms of whether it's unconditional or conditional, or what do you mean there? Okay, cool. Cool. Any other ones before we get started? Okay. Um, so in terms of conditional, unconditional offers, I'll talk about that as well. Um, so yeah, cool, cool. Making the most out of uni. Yep. So we've got that. I've got a competition. Yeah, them ones, especially depending on your course. Um, Boom. So, seeing as it's more of a workshop vibe, I'm gonna give you guys the kind of brief overlay of the you guys you keep dropping your things in the chat. That's no problem. Okay. I like these. I like these. That's uni. Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that. I like that. And we're actually we're gonna touch on all of that and more. So essentially this is kind of divided into what in somewhat of like a morning session and then an afternoon session. Um, and then this is kind of like the brief, but in terms of the themes, we're kind of touching on essentially an introduction to some extent of everything in general. We'll talk a bit about things that relate to mental health, things that relate to like financial health, sexual health, and then making the most out of university, both in terms of, and then in the midst of all of it, we talk about, what to do about results, the differences in the lifestyle, the jump and everything. And my aim is, although this was originally supposed to be at 5 till 5, seeing this is online and it's going to be a lot of information, I'm going to try my best to kind of vary it and then make sure that I don't overload you guys. So uh, please do take notes. At the end of this, we will send you a booklet, which basically has a somewhat of a summary of everything that I'm going to touch today on a high level with some resources. And we'll also share with you guys some things, especially in terms of to help you guys when it comes to finances. So um, this is just kind of the overlay. And in Tickzonms, when I say we're obviously trying to turn hindsight to foresight, we just try to make sure that we give you guys the honest truth, as far as we understand it to be, to kind of prepare you guys properly. So no question is off limits here. And we'll try at the best of our ability to kind of be honest and give you guys the correct, honest things of the reality of how it is and how it's out there. Um, so I stop sharing. So to start, I'm going to first of all introduce myself properly, and then I would like everybody to introduce themselves. Just say one thing that they're about themselves that they're comfortable sharing, or just what university you applied for, both your firm and your backup, as well as the course that you applied for. So I'll go first. My name is Ugo. Some people call me Mr. Tickzon. I founded Tickzon Mentorship Scheme in 2018. I was born in London, grew up partially in London, grew up in Nigeria, came back for sixth form and university, and studied mechanical engineering at the University of Birmingham. for a 4-year degree and the Masters of Engineering, and came out in 2018. Of which, when I started Tickzon Mentorship Scheme, enjoyed uni. It was an interesting experience, and some of the experiences will still be one of the things that you kind of find a lot of times is that most people aren't necessarily prepared for the jump. Maybe I was pretty much a bit more prepared than most, just because of the different kind of experiences that I've had in my life, having lived away by myself and done all those things, handled money. But it can be a definite struggle. But in terms of, since I've finished uni, I enjoyed the experience for myself personally, and don't necessarily regret that decision. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best decision for everybody. So to kick off, could be I'll go first by Nergisk. First of all, tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, you pronounced it right. So my name is
cool.
Nergisk.
Cool.
I'm in year 12 and I'm thinking of applying to Queen Mary.
All
right. I study politics and government, English literature, and health and social care, and Turkish. And yeah, I aspire to be a solicitor.
And
that's it.
Do that again. Politics, government.
English literature.
And Turkish.
Yeah, and health and social care.
Sorry, and what?
Health and social care.
Okay. You're doing 5. Are you doing IB or you do A level?
A level.
Okay. Like it. All right. Cool. Rudo.
Hey, I'm Rudo. I don't actually go to school in the UK. I went to school in South Africa. So I've already graduated, and I'm going to be studying data science at the University of Portsmouth.
When you starting?
This September.
Okay, cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So have you applied and got in, or are you waiting for results day?
I've applied and gotten.
Okay, cool. All right, then if that's the case, then we've got, and then Serena.
Hi guys, I'm Serena. I've been to university. I studied economics and management. I'm Ugo's friend, so I'm just here to help out. And if you guys have any questions that I could also provide some perspective on, then I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Cool. So, and I believe we had, okay, Claudia's jumped off, and yeah. Okay. So, okay. And we got finances. And okay. Cool. So I'll tailor today towards you guys, give you guys the information, even though the results day, I'll basically go through the whole shebang anyway. And we'll see how it goes. Obviously, this is also being recorded, so at the end we'll kind of chop it up and put it on YouTube. And yeah, I don't know why my screen's not coming on. Okay, cool. All right. So all right, guys. So to kick it off, I'm gonna first of all show you guys the video. Do-do-do-do. Where are you? Hmm. Where are you? All right, so let me know if you guys can hear the audio from. Oh. Hear the audio from this. Can you guys hear the audio? Let me see. Can you hear this audio? You can see the screen I've shared. Okay.
Yeah, we can see the screen, but I can't hear anything.
Okay. Let's see. All right.
Take off your backpacks. Hey, line up. Line up.
Yeah.
Everybody line up. We're about to race. Everybody line up. Shoulder to shoulder. Take off your backpacks. Basketball, line up. We're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. A $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people up here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go! If you didn't learn anything from this activity, you're a fool.
Cool. Has anybody seen that video before?
No, I've never seen it.
Cool. Okay, cool. So I'm going to kind of remix that to give it better context, but this is so before I go into that, what's you guys' reactions to that video? Yeah. Or the first time I watched it, I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. So yeah, no, it does give a lot of perspective, to be honest, on how things are. And obviously one of the things we're trying to aid people here is in social mobility, which essentially means the ability to kind of navigate and kind of go through the class structures and the economic structures to kind of get to a place wherever you want to be in that place. And to some extent, there is quote unquote barriers, but it's when obviously this video, when I do it in person, I do it in a different way to kind of highlight it in a more nuanced way, as opposed to just strictly on a race point of view or a quote unquote minority versus majority point of view. Now, when it comes to so this is $100 race, but what it was based on is something called the privilege ladder. And so essentially it's a series of questions whereby if you take a couple of steps, they'll ask you a question. If it's true to you, take a couple of steps. In true form of it, with a couple of statements, you can take steps back, you can take steps forward. And also in terms of that, there's a way in which just based on your socioeconomic status or things that may not be which is out of your control to some extent, can kind of determine where you probably end in high likelihood where you probably end up in society. So for example, if when somebody enters the care system, a lot of them end up staying in the care system, and kind of it's very hard for them to, in terms of socioeconomic status, kind of break out of that trajectory, and cycles continue based on that. But it's important to understand that everybody has privileges, regardless of who you are. So when I run this proper, everybody has it, regardless of, depending on the setting you are, depending on where you are, you have a privilege, whether you choose to see it or not. So whether you're black, white, of any race, of any religion, of any creed, there's always somebody that you have privilege over. And even in that society that you feel that you may not be privileged at all, you may have some privilege. So if you have two parents in the home, that's already a privilege over others in some sense, because a two-parent home, regardless of, depending on the severity, but the two-parent homes, statistically, the kids will have a better socioeconomic status, or be able to be mobile socially in the world. Even little things like how many books did you have as a kid growing up, or whether you were even reading, or your ability to have holidays, or your ability to like travel, see the world, or how strong your family unit was, or community. But irregardless of struggles, sometimes having a struggle can sometimes also be a privilege in and of itself. Everything's about perspective, in that some people who've like quote unquote, like whether it's sports, or sports is a good vehicle to kind of have some level of struggle for people to kind of be able to persevere. Some people it's like overcoming bad situations, or tragedies. So I bring that up because one of the privileges that kind of comes down is that, or is in terms of comparing yourself to the whole populations, whether you get a university degree or not, but then not necessarily just a university degree, whether you get a higher learning, a higher education in general, because I'll touch on later about the alternatives to university, and not necessarily whether it actually is the best avenue for you. So first thing to understand is that we all have privileges, regardless, can you speak more than one language? Being, having a different experience. They're all that. So it's very important for me from the get-go to ensure and let people understand that there should, because sometimes we kind of go into it. Sometimes we go into it kind of with like inferiority complex sometimes into these things, and they come from a real place in which people feel that. But understand that you are privileged in that sense, but it's also important to understand that the differences doesn't necessarily what's the word? The difference is just adds to each of our uniqueness. And sometimes when it comes to privileges as well, or what you may have over somebody else, even in terms of like a lot of the things that we kind of argue about in society these days is stuff that you personally had no say or control over, from your creed, color, gender, religion, in terms of how you came into the world, just the status of your parents' income, the environment or neighborhood you grew up in, the country that you came from. All those are things that you don't necessarily have any control over, but to some extent within society does put you in a certain position, but it just makes the journey a bit more interesting. So all of us will have different journeys to get to the same place. Some people will take longer, some people will take shorter, but the journey is kind of where it goes. So if you think of life as a game of cards, so I like to play blackjack, not the gambling one, but like the one where it's eights to miss a go or whatever. And regardless of the hand, I'm pretty confident I'm gonna win the game. But then that's with a lot of us with a lot of games, whether it's articulate, it doesn't matter the game. We all kind of go into it with regardless of the cards I'm dealt, I'm able to win, and that's a kind of a good way to look at life, in that sense. So let me rip this up and keep this aside. Guys, if I'm saying anything that doesn't make sense, let me know. All right. So if I could ask everybody to go to Kahoot. So to intro the first one, I'll talk about, and in this I'll talk about the realities of uni to some extent and how it is. So if you guys could, and the code is All right, so and the game pin is there we go. Three, 1, 5, 6, 8. So cool. Cool. Wait for Rudo to jump on. So just go to that link that I sent you, www.docs.kahoot.it, and then you join the game, and then just ask for a game pin. Rudo, you joining us? SV's left us. Everybody's disappeared.
No, I'm still on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because wait, try and rejoin, and then Rudo. Okay, there you go. Rudo, are you joining us, or are we gonna go ahead without you? Cool. I'll wait for you. This is a short one anyway, but there we go. Cool. So and we'll start it off. So there's just 3 questions. So first question. Which of these is mental health issue? Okay, cool. So yes. uh well, I didn't try to make it unnecessarily hard anyway. Yeah, when it comes to mental health, ultimately, yes, anxiety is an issue, depression is an issue, and stress is also a mental health issue, which most people don't know that stress is a mental health issue. But I'll come to talk about stress in a second. Also, there's extra points for speed, so that's the that ones. But then I guess it's just it's friendly here. All right, cool. Mm, mm. So nobody got that one. Yeah. So interesting. So I'll come to that in a second. Uh, and then last question. Okay. So that's the end of that one. So don't worry, everybody's a winner. Winner. All right, so cool. So thanks for playing along, guys. All right, so in terms of yes, so statistically, women are actually more likely to have a common mental health issue when it comes to the mental health, and this is according to the Mental Health Foundation. And so this is everything from like anxiety to a lot of it's anxiety, there's stress, there's depression, there's obviously under mental health, there's loads of other things that come under it, both mental health issues and quote unquote psychological issues that people generally bundle under the whole mud of mental health. Now, obviously, narratives have been changing, especially because of COVID. But previously speaking, to give you a second, you're welcome. Listen, we try to bring back the old school vibes. But no, next workshop we've got coming up in a couple of months has a lot more Kahoot, especially because that one's meant to be online more so than this one. So mental health in the past is one of those ones, especially I'm African. So most times when for lack of a better word, when people talk about mental health, it's one of those ones that is first thing that comes to people's mind is asylums and like schizophrenia, bipolar, and like essentially, for lack of a better word, it wasn't a good perception. It was very much like if you said you had mental health, it's like for them you must be mad, and that's the perception that it was back then. So much so that things like stress was very much overlooked as a mental health issue. Now, women are more likely to have a more common mental health disorder, funnily enough. But then at the same time, men are more likely to commit suicide, especially suicide due to depression. And so it's also due to how men and women typically deal with issues and how men can be a bit more lethal. So it's more likely in terms of mental health point of view, or at least you've gone through your life, it's more likely that you'll find women would, let's say, quote unquote, are more likely to self-harm in terms of like cutting themselves than to quote unquote self-delete, as they say online, to kind of make sure that they don't end up getting their video taken down from using the word Sue and Hidsight. But when it comes to mental health, obviously it's important for all of us, and it kind of all feeds in. So I normally say to people, I'll normally ask them, how you doing physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, in your relationships, financially, and I believe I'm missing one, and spiritually. Now, the interesting thing about our mental health is that all of these things are kind of intertwined. So whether it's your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationships. 2, 4, 6. That's one. That's a mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Right. And naturally. So I call these kind of like the 7 pillars. And when it comes to mental health can sometimes be one of the hardest ones. And sometimes even sexually, because people only think that purely as just like sex, but it's not just sex. It's most like, it's also like intimacy and stuff like that. Now, the issue with mental health to some extent is that it's, for a lot of people, it's one of the ones that they find it harder to grasp with, because it's not the one that you can you can't put it on a chart. So physically, I can just say, oh, you know, I went to the gym 5 times, or I went for a jog, or I wait, you know, I can deadlift 115, I can deadlift 120. I'm eating my greens. With emotionally, it's like, okay, I'm okay. I feel stable. I don't feel like erratic. Spiritually, it's like, okay, I have a connection with God. I'm going to temple, mosque, or church, or I'm content within myself and my place in the world. You know, financially, it's like, okay, do I have savings? Do I don't have savings? Relationships, okay, me and my dad are good. Me and my mom are good. Brothers, sisters, friends. Sexually, okay, cool. I've got a partner. Mental, sometimes it seems to be the hardest one for people. And the interesting thing about university, and especially this society, so if you're coming from SA, is majority of people, if they've never had a mental health like occurrence or issue in their life, then they will have it in university. And that's the first place most people have it. And a lot of people don't end up dropping out of university because of all the pressures that come out with university, the isolation, and all those things. Now, in terms of managing your mental health and also recognizing it. So first of all, I'm going to talk about stress and recognizing stress. Now, a lot of times people, you know, people don't, there's certain things that people take for granted in terms of what your body's trying to tell you. So a lot of times we're like, you know, if you got a headache, you're just like, I got a headache. So, you know, but why do you have a headache? You know, so you have a headache sometimes because you're dehydrated, you've not drank water. You got a headache sometimes because you're stressed. You got a headache because you haven't eaten. You've got a headache because you have a fever coming. You have a headache because it's associated with other sicknesses. There's a lot of reasons why you have a headache. And a lot of times it's a similar thing with stress. Now, a lot of times people don't really recognize they're stressed until my hair is falling out, you know, until it physically hits them. Now, if you're waiting till stress physically hits you, then you're overdue from recognizing what your body has been trying to tell you. And so stress, the easiest way to identify stress is when you see a deviation. I don't even know if I'm spelling this correctly. Is it E? Okay. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. From the norm or normal. So deviation from the normal essentially is just this, you know that you're kind of stressed. So if you, and when I say the normal, is the normal you. So if you are you're consistently a night owl and you're consistently an insomniac, so you go to bed between 1 and then wake up at 8, and that's your consistent thing, that's your normal. By the point that you're struggling to go to bed at 1, or you have things like, so easy tells you struggling to sleep, struggling to eat, or loss of appetite. So basically, lack of motivation. So when you're like unbothered or stuff like that, and so when basically at any point in time where, so, and obviously this requires you, to spend time with yourself, which a lot of people don't do. And so when I come to talk about managing, I'll speak about spending time with yourself and what that actually looks like, and also in the concept of loving yourself, which people like to throw around but don't necessarily know what that means a lot of the time. Obviously, if I'm speaking too fast or you want me to go back on something or whatever, shout. There's no, it's like uni, just talk whenever, and then I'll address that. So anytime when you see a deviation from the norm and the normal you, that's when you know that you're about to be stressed or you are stressed. So a lot of people, it's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. It's like, okay, you usually eat 3 times a day. Ooh, okay, loneliness. I'm gonna add that one. Yeah, that one. That one is gonna go in the next part of this actual section, and this also goes in the last part in terms of when I'm speaking about what's it called? Loneliness is, I'll speak about that in the next part of this, and also in terms of managing it, and also I'll speak about that towards the end when I'm talking about getting the most out of university. So when you see a deviation from the norm, lack of motivation, you used to eat 3 times a day, now you're eating 2, you used to enjoy to go see your friends, you're now unbothered. Now, mind you, there's a difference between, depending on where you are in life, sometimes it's you're evolving to a new step. Like, it's like, I used to play with Action Man. I watched all the cartoons, even from Barbie to Bratz to Mortal Kombat. It didn't matter. I was watching it. I won't say I outgrew it, but let's say I outgrew, let's say Hot Wheels and stuff like that. Outgrowing something is different, that you're now stressed because you're no longer interested in doing that. Your interest can evolve. But when you realize that, especially when it comes from not taking care of yourself, because the interesting thing that happens when we have mental health issues or moments, because there's no such thing as normal. Mental health is like, we're all in a spectrum of which you're inside. Let's say there's a spectrum and you're all within here, and that's what normal is. So if you've ever done maths and they've told you about normal distributions, and so here is normal, and then here is the extremes on either side. And so within that realm of normal, it's about you managing yourself. And then either or, that's when they'll start maybe trying to prescribe or do anything like that. Now, so but the interesting thing about mental health is that whenever people are going through it, 9 times out of 10, they do the opposite of what they need. So if someone who's depressed or having a mental health issue, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, stress, and most people don't know what these are, but I'll explain to some extent to my best of ability. But when you have a mental health moment, it's like, okay, you feel alone, or you want to be around people, but somehow you withdraw. It's like you're depressed, but you're in your room, but you would hope that somebody will come see you. You want to like you're feeling like unwell, but you won't go outside to go get some light. You kind of flake out on stuff. You withdraw yourself at the same time wishing people should come closer to you. So it's almost like we're looking for people to save us, but a lot of times we don't realize that we can save ourselves in that moment. And the biggest thing for you to do when you have a mental health issue is to ask for help. And that can be the biggest step, to just say, to ask for help. Just say, I'm going through a moment right now, whether it's your mom, dad, brother, sister, friend. Sometimes a stranger is better, to be honest, because sometimes we don't tell the people who are closest to us because we don't want them to worry. And sometimes we've had enough experience with them whereby we kind of anticipate their reaction. So I know enough Africans who their moms are mental health nurses, but then if you mention mental health to that mom, they're going to take you to church. So in that scenario, they're not calling her when they're having a mental health issue, because they're going to and sometimes they'll make the call and they're surprised at the reaction they get. But because of how the relationship is built up, it doesn't allow them to actually truly confide in them. Because I say this about a lot of people in general, they confide where they feel safe, and they also confide, let's say women would typically confide where they feel safe. Men will typically confide where they feel like they trust this person. So basically, trust and being able to trust this place you are and feel safe is important to everybody in terms of them being able to share. Or sometimes it's about no repercussions. That's the reason why having a counselor or therapy kind of works very well for some people, because like there's no record of this reaction. Like, there's no check, some people don't like pity or that kind of stuff, or like people worrying about them too tough, so they don't do it. But when people are going through mental health issues, they typically end up deviating from their normal, and they end up most times neglecting themselves and taking care of themselves. And a lot of the times they withdraw. They don't, they wanted to speak with friends and not speak with friends, but they're also thinking, why is no one checking on me? They don't go outside. And so in terms of managing mental health, one of trying to like take the big step of asking for help. But one of the first things you can do is exercise. So exercise is the quickest way to kind of first react to any mental health issue that you have going on. Now, the reason why it's important to manage stress is because stress, unmanaged, quickly gets you to feeling overwhelmed. And then quickly, before you know it, you burn out. That's just literally what happens. You get stressed, you think I'm all right. You kind of deny it. Then you feel a bit overwhelmed, and then you're still riding through it. And then before you know it, you're burnt out. And then half the things you were able to do before, you can't do it. You know, I've been in moments where I opened up a Microsoft Word document. I was there for 3 hours, couldn't do nothing. Couldn't do absolutely nothing. Just there trying to type nothing, because you've allowed yourself to go from stress to being overwhelmed. There's a lot going on, and then burnout. And at any point in time, if you had things to like help manage this, then it would have worked out well. Now, in terms of what's it called, managing mental health, and then I also talk about what to do to get out of burnout. I have a video on that as well on the YouTube. When I said all of these are interconnected, they very much are interconnected, and these are very much cohesive in order to like make us like basically function as normal. I know there's like a big movement to say, I don't need nobody, I'm an independent human being, but human beings have never been truly independent. We've always been codependent, you know, and it's codependent or interdependent means that you can simultaneously be independent in yourself, but understanding that we kind of affect and need each other. So it's never a good place to get to where you're just like, I don't need nobody. It's not a good place to be in. Trust me, especially in this country. If you know, all my friends that come from Niger or Ghana or whatever that come to the UK, I've got family members and stuff like that. They come to UK because they're all running away from Nigeria, or they think it's a better life here it's a better life here, I guess, comparatively speaking, in the power of the pound. But there's a lot of, this is why I say there's privilege everywhere. So somebody in Nigeria doesn't think they're really privileged where they are, because they don't, they're seeing like economic situation, but they don't see that. But they come over here, and I promise you, it's like a 9 out of 10 situation. Everyone starts talking to me about mental health. Like, I'm kind of depressed, I'm alone, and all these kind of things. So these things are all interdependent, because the human being's biggest struggle in life is balance. Balance, bank account balance, all balances. It's this biggest struggle. And if you're able to kind of structure your time in a way that gives you a balance across all of these things, then you'll be able to manage your mental health, physical, and all of that. And then you should be able to be long lasting. So even in terms of like a mental health, if you had a mental health issue, exercising is very much good in terms of help manage your mental health. It makes you feel good. It releases endorphins. It gets the blood flowing. It gets you out of a what's the word? It's not a static space, but a what's the word? A more dormant reality, if that makes sense. So it keeps you moving, and it helps boost your mood. Emotional, in terms of like, where you are in terms of your friendships and your relationships, in terms of your emotional state. And obviously, depending on what's going through in your life, or being able to manage your emotions is very important. And whether it's guy or girl, depending on what's going on in your life, or hormones, or whatever it may be, even sometimes the medicines you're in can affect your mood, and in turn affect your emotions. If you're able to manage that, and then end up bringing up support systems in order to do that, that's the reason why sometimes the trigger for a mental health issue sometimes wasn't a mental health per se, it's emotional. It's like, okay, I broke up with this person, or I lost a loved one, and then that's what triggers this. And so managing your emotions, or bringing things that will kind of fill your cup in terms of emotionally speaking, is important, especially in a positive point of view, because sometimes people take something over nothing, even if that's negative in that sense, which is understandable in truth. Spiritual, and this is just talking about, in terms of spiritual, it's more like where you find yourself in this world, meaning how you see yourself, whether that be a connection with God, but more so in terms of a purpose in life, both in terms of whether it's helping people, doing something for somebody, being a leader, being a follower. What's your connection to the world and to out, something bigger than yourself. Whether and when I say spiritual, that's regardless of I don't really mind your religion, creed, or whatever it may be. You can be an atheist, you still have some sense about beliefs and understanding of the world. And even in this regard, it also comes down to your it also comes back to your like your morals and stuff like that. Then in terms of financial, I'm going to come into finances next anyway, but your financial life kind of reflects your personal life, and some of the people in terms of committing suicide is all just due to no peas. It's a small fraction, but it is a notable fraction. When life becomes hard, when you don't have money, and or if you're not able to provide, and that can also affect your emotionally. Let's say in the case of men, it can affect them emotionally in their ability to, in their mind, provide and help out the people around them, and that can lead to them, or even in terms of just being in a bad spot, being close to homelessness. Some people rather go than to be on the street, or as some people will struggle in university. It's one of the biggest things. Relationships, in terms of your friendships and whatnot, and how healthy they are, and ultimately, and then obviously sexual in terms of intimacy and stuff like that. And ultimately, this is the balance that people find it hard to do. And within university, being able to structure your time or do things that kind of gives you somewhat of a balance across all of that will help you to manage your mental health and be able to avoid getting overwhelmed and burnout, because the step is very big. Now, the difference in terms of university and like sixth form or anywhere else is that when you come to university now, you're on your own, effectively speaking. Even if, unless you're living at home with friends and family, you're on your own. And to some extent, that's a good thing, but for some extent, that's a shock for people. You now have to start worrying about your own security, or these new people you're going to meet. A lot of people are afraid to come and meet new people, or some people kind of go, I've got my friends already, so I'm not going to say hi to anybody. Some of people's biggest fears coming to university is making friends, or would people like me, or all that kind of stuff. And finances, which is a big one when it comes to university, because when I say when the whole thing was about, school got you to university, now will help you to survive it, I don't say that lightly. Surviving uni is in and of itself is a tough thing, especially in this country, considering the context and everything. And also in terms of like university, as the unis are, the truth of the matter is no one cares. Everyone cares about you, but at the same time, no one cares about you. And realistically speaking, in university, if you don't say I need help, nobody's helping you. If you don't say I don't have a problem, no lecturer is checking up on you. If you don't say hi to somebody, then you're not going to have any friends. And the structure within university here, people, you sometimes you'd go, like you leave uni here and then you meet somebody in random life, and then it's like, oh, they went to uni at the same time you did, especially if you're somebody that was like the bait and really known, but it's like, I've never seen this person in my life. And university is also a big place, regardless of if it's in London or if it's in a campus uni or if it's spread out. It's so big that you could be there and never see anybody, and it's easy to get lost in that, with all the pressures, not feeling supported, not feeling helped. And the change as well, where like, let's say if you're at home with family, where it's like you're used to just coming home and seeing a familiar face and somebody just saying, how are you? And those small things that you don't even realize are lost, that because, maybe in the beginning, like maybe your mom might be calling you every day, but at a certain point that doesn't turn from every day, that turns from like every day to maybe once a week. And even you may, context changes, you're moving away, friends have all gone to different universities, relationships, whether it's friendships or boyfriend, girlfriend, or any of those ones, sometimes don't survive that jump. And so it's such a big one that some people get shocked. Like people get shocked. So when I went to Birmingham, I remember there was a girl who came from Ireland, Northern Ireland, to come and do medicine. And, she had homesickness and she just couldn't hack it and quit uni within a week. And she didn't even make it through freshers and then just cut. And so being able to try and get some balance, will help you out. Now, in this next, does that all make sense? So in this next one, I'm going to talk about, and if there's any points you want me to continue to delve on more, because I want to make sure that I use the time efficiently for you guys, you let me know. So on this one now, I'm going to talk about loneliness, loving yourself, balance, and getting out of burnout. Now, like I said earlier on, at least in the UK, it's, you know, and it's this is how when I say it's bad, it's bad. But it's not impossible to navigate. Not everybody goes to university and has a mental health struggle or has a mental health moment. Now, in a lot of those scenarios, there's a lot of them would have a good, you know, some decent structure to make it that they didn't feel that way, whether it's they made a lot of friends, but again, quality over quantity in any stage in life. Their ability, you know, to just be okay with what they're doing. But one of the things that leads to mental health a lot within universities and within the UK especially is loneliness. Now, you know, even in the Bible, you know, God has said it's not good for man to be alone. And the difference between being alone and feeling alone, because loneliness isn't necessarily oh, I don't have anybody around me. Because sometimes the people where people feel the most lonely is in the midst of people. Loneliness is just feeling, you know, what's the word? It's like there's a saying in diversity where they're like, oh, you can be invited to a party, but you're not asked to dance. And so this, you know, it's one of the ones you can be in the room, but no one cares. And sometimes even being in the midst of people and feeling alone can be worse than just actually just feeling alone, but alone at the same time, because you know that, okay, I've not actually made friends and stuff like that. So to some extent, you feel like you have some control over, maybe I need to get off of the fear or shyness to go and say, let me say hi to one person. But, you know, when you're in the midst of people and then you still feel isolated, now that can definitely hurt. Now, in terms of university, you know, and I'm going to thread everything everything is kind of interconnected. In terms of like the loneliness point of view and managing your mental health, it's important for you to get involved. You know, if whether you're moving to a new country, new city or whatnot, I say try as many societies as possible. Try out all the passions that you can do, which is kind of why, simultaneously speaking, at least for the first year of uni, I always find it that it's best to be on campus or as close to campus as possible, purely because of because depending on different courses or whatnot, most activities that will happen in the evening, like, you know, 6, 7, 8. And if you're going home every time, depending on how you know, sometimes even if your parents are very chilled, you feel some type of way coming home every day at 10 p.m. when you just turned 18, when your parents may have been used to you doing that maybe once every couple of weeks, and they start asking questions because some of them may not really understand how universities are. But it's important in order to combat loneliness is just to get involved. That's literally what it is. So, you know, for me, I joined as many societies as I could. Like I even did ballroom dancing. I did jiu-jitsu. I did everything. At least go for the tasters. And the thing about it is when you go into uni, and I'll just say this now as opposed to covering it later. When it comes to making friends, genuinely speaking, just say hi. That is really what it is. Just say hi, especially in your first 2 weeks. The fears you have, everybody has. So everybody's feeling, oh, okay, I'm not going to meet nobody. I'm not going to have no friends and whatnot. Everybody's afraid. And so sometimes people are just looking for somebody to set pace and just say, hi, my name is this. You know, I saw people in the midst of me walking to, remember the first time I met friend Temi, I said, hi. She was just walking. I was like, hey, and then we'll just say hi. And it's important to like be proactive in trying to what's it called? combat loneliness, but especially in uni. What's the word? It's not words. What's not words. It's important to combat that because I'm just gonna call this. I've forgotten what I used to call it, but it's not. I'm just gonna call it. It's not beliefs, but I'm gonna call it beliefs for the meantime until I remember the actual word that I call it. Oh, I know what it's got. Yeah. Now, isolation in university can be very tough for people, and people react in different ways. And that can now make people end up like finding themselves in crowds that they don't feel like they belong, or doing things that they don't feel like they belong, just in order to kind of belong, essentially. And sometimes that will make you do things that may be against your values. Now, this one I'll kind of shift into loving yourself and going into values. Now, values is just essentially the things you believe in for that period of time. Now, it's okay for your values to change and evolve regardless of what the topic is. It's important that you reflect and are in control of that. Now, I find that in life that when people don't know what their values are, they move like the wind. They can be pushed and pulled into anything. And so when you are, and let's say you know what your values are, whenever you're in a transitional period of your values where you're not sure if those values are values you hold anymore, people find themselves doing things that they probably wouldn't have done before. And so spending time with yourself to find those values is important in order for you to kind of know how you want to move whilst in uni, because it's a place where, again, never had a mental health situation, that's where you probably have it there. If you've never had like a intimate relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, people chasing you, not chasing you, if you go to uni, somebody will find you. Unless you're hiding in your room. Like university is a lot of firsts for a lot of people. Living away, having the freedom to go to bed and go, your parents aren't chasing you to go to bed, your parents aren't chasing you to come home, people aren't checking on you. It's a first for everyone. Now, so defining your values is very important. Now, in terms of loving yourself, now people a lot of times say loving yourself, and people kind of especially if you're like a people pleaser, or you don't want to disappoint your parents, or what's it called? You're used to like doing a lot of stuff for a lot of people or whatnot, or focusing on other people other than yourself. Some people look at loving themselves as withdrawal, as like, okay, I'm gonna focus on myself. I'm gonna cut all these people out and I'm gonna focus on myself. You very quickly get back to loneliness. Loving yourself doesn't mean selfish love. It's about it's about myself. You see sometimes some people be like, oh yeah, I can't talk to you, I'm focused on myself right now. No, loving yourself means, because what you've missed out there is that you made other people a priority over yourself. But loving yourself is about your ability to be able to make yourself a priority whilst making other people a priority. So, and I've seen it in real life, but a mom can't really come to me and say, I'm going to take a break from my kids. It doesn't really make sense. You're supposed to be able to make time for your kids, but also make time for yourself. Now, if you are from 10 or 24 hours is all about your kids, or your 24/7 is all about your parents, or your 24/7 is all about your husband or your wife, your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you are neglecting yourself and you're not making yourself a priority. And in that sense, it's one of those ones, for example, for myself, I make time to some extent for all my loved ones, friends, families, even foes. But at the same time, I still make sure I spend time with myself. I still go and try and exercise. I still try my best to eat well, which is up and down, and try my best to take care of myself. And so loving yourself isn't about being selfish love. It's about being able to make yourself a priority in the midst of loving other people. And also loving yourself, as one instinct that most people don't do, is spending time with yourself. Now, what does spending time with yourself look like? Now, for a lot of people, their best ideas come when they're in the shower. That's when their best ideas come. Now, now in this day and age, something, going for a walk, having a shower. Now, the reason why some people don't have those anymore, so the number of people who now say that they had their best ideas showering or going for a walk is because no longer do that, is because of distractions. Now, most of our phones now are waterproof, or you got Bluetooth speakers that are waterproof. The reason why a lot of times people's best things were in the shower or going outside was because those are the few times, and that was the first 20 minutes in your whole day, you had no distraction. And so when you have no distraction, you actually let your brain, let yourself reveal itself, and you can actually understand yourself more, in that you now let your thoughts flow, and then, oh, I think I should do that. Oh, I think I should do that. Oh, maybe I was moving mad there. Maybe I made sense there. Next time I should fight for myself more. Next time I should be a bit quiet. And those are the ideas and the crazy stuff that goes on in the shower, or going out for a walk. I like walks. I like jogs. Especially I personally, early morning, late evening, there's no cars. It's just all serene. It's all nice, and spending time with yourself is you will have more great ideas, and you'll be able to manage your mental health, especially in university, more, because you've removed yourself from distractions. Now, it can be tough, especially if you've had traumatic events, or this friend hurt you, or your dad, your mom, brother, sister, all those kind of things. And so sometimes people don't want those thoughts to flow. And what's it called? People don't want those thoughts to flow, because sometimes they can feel it's a bit too much and it's overwhelming. And what's it called? Yeah, they can feel like it's overwhelming. And because of that, then they won't what's it called? Because they feel like it's overwhelming, then they won't allow it to flow. Now, I was looking for a video. I might show it later just to illustrate it, but it's does everyone here know what stagnant water is? So stagnant water is just water that's not moving, and then it becomes like gunk. It becomes dirty, mosquitoes start coming. Now, this is what happens when we bottle things up. But then when you let it flow, and it moves like a river, so any river that's blocked up like a dam, it starts becoming smelly and whatnot. But when you open it and let it run and you get it through, the initial one is a bit tough, but it gets through. So spending time with yourself is also important for your mental health. And also one that people don't necessarily recognize, and this is both your mental health and your emotional health. And the interesting thing about it is when I say everything's connected, because you have anxiety, that's why you have diarrhea. It's like physically, people start getting stressed, they start losing weight. People start getting stressed, their hair starts falling out, or their hair starts turning gray. Things are all connected by things that seem so unrelated, and your body kind of goes to that. Now, one thing that people don't really practice these days, a lot of time, for their own well-being, is forgiveness and or acceptance. Now, forgiveness literally is not for the person that you are forgiving, it's for yourself. And so understanding that, I don't take a lot of creed from rappers sometimes, but I remember the song Detroit versus Everybody with Eminem, Royce the 5'9", all these Detroit guys. And Royce the 5'9" said a line in there, and he said, holding a grudge is like letting somebody live in your head rent-free. Now, and I've seen this very much a lot in life, whereby, this person hurt you in 2007, and it's 2015, you've not spoken to them, but somehow this person is still hurting you. A lot of times we don't recognize that we have the power to change our situation. And it's very important to understand that A, we always have a choice. B, we have the power to change our situation. And we also have the choice to forgive. Now, forgiving somebody doesn't mean you condone what they did. I believe in forgive, but don't forget, because in forgiving the person means that you're letting go of the power that this holds onto you. But in the aim of not forgetting is the wisdom and lessons from this. So whenever something happens to you, you also have to ask the question, okay, this person did this to me. I'm not going to forget that this person did this to me, so I can learn how we got into the situation. And when you assess the situation, you look at both how I acted, how I facilitated it, you know, and how this person did. Because sometimes, and you got to look at both sides so you don't go either way. Now, this is very important in university because you're going to have a lot of relationships. You're going to have a lot of friends in first year. You're going to meet a lot of people in first year that might not end up being the people you meet in third year. And being able to like forgive and not hold grudges and move through life will make your life a bit more easier. Because as we go through life, we get a lot of baggage, but then, you know, it's like, have any of you tried to hold, if you hold a cup like this, even if I put my hand like this, holding this pen like this, it's so easy right now. But if I hold it for like a day, my arm will start vibrating. If I try to hold it for a month, my arm is just heavy, like it's probably dead. I'll probably have to put a support under here. That's what we do when we're holding grudges and we're not able to forgive certain things and allow things to still have power over us and still, yes, correct, self-sabotage. And a lot of people are in the business of self-sabotaging. And it's important for us to be able to forgive those who've hurt us, or if you're not able to forgive, accept that it happened to you. You know, time doesn't necessarily heal all wounds, but time allows you sometimes to deal with the wounds. You know, it's like, I have lots of scars on my body. When they happened at first, I was like, oh, rah, look at the scar, it's mad. And then after time, you're like, you learn to like it's, you know, I have like a big scar on my arm. It looks like a watch. I just look at it and like, oh yeah, what time it is. You get to a point where you're able to deal with the scars as opposed to continuously remembering the pain the scars gave you. And then balance. Now, the way you achieve balance is by, you know, so I always say to people, how you see what people is important to people is how you spend your time, energy, and money. Your time, energy, and money. Now, these are in order. All right. I like this. I don't know if you, but forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to be affected. Facts. That is really true. That's 100% true. Of which a lot, yeah, you know, I've seen it too many times. Even like you see people in, whether it's relationships, friendships, or whatever, they self-sabotage. And it's similar to what I said about the mental health. It's like, it's the same thing. We're prone to self-sabotage when it's a fight or flight situation where like, I need help. I ain't gonna ask for it, but I'm gonna be mad at people who don't tell me that I need some help. Everybody has problems. I really agree with that. So, because sometimes I imagine myself as a tree with branches, and the more I hold on to grudges, worries, and pain, I visualize it as adding on weight to the branches. So we need to learn to let go of these weights to blossom, the power of letting go. And honestly, your ability to let go, forgive, accept will make, like, you'll have such an easier life. Now, again, being African, and this is not limited to Africans, but I'm gonna just use them as examples. You know, because I've seen some Indian aunties and uncles do it. I've seen some, but Asian or whatnot. Sometimes the ability to tell me stories from that they're hurt from 1930, you know, for like the last 10 years, I've heard the same story about this person that hurt you in 2003. It's December 16th or whatnot, and this person did this, but you tell me you've forgiven this person, but you still bring up the same story and you're still crying the same way. You're hurting yourself. And so it's also the same thing about like within mental health, about like fear and anxiety. Anxiety, you know, somebody summarized anxiety and depression like this. Depression is being stuck in the past, or the now. Anxiety is being stuck in the future. So, you know, it's like, it's something happened to me, or when you're anxious about something, like especially people have panic attacks or anxiety attacks because exams are coming, or I'm not good enough, imposter syndrome, I'm about to give a speech. And the thing with like fear especially is like, we hurt ourselves twice. So it's like, something hasn't happened to us yet. And now I'm, you know, let's say I'm afraid this job is going to reject me. So I'm already hurt, and I say they're going to reject me. And then when I get to the job, they rejected me. So I've been rejected twice. So it doubles these things. And holding grudges can do the double on us, whereby we're even worrying about people that aren't even thinking about us. Like, you know, we're thinking like, this guy did this or this girl did this. Your ability to let go, accept, and forgive will give you You see, when people are talking soft life, that is a soft life. Anybody, the nicest people or the happiest or the people who are perceived to be the happiest are some of the people who have been able to forgive the most. Not necessarily, their life seems calm not because of no problems. No, but there's no such thing as a human being with no problems, but because of their ability to kind of let go and keep moving. Acceptance is a big thing when it comes to times where you're dealing with change in uni, especially as well. Sometimes when you have to accept when relationships and friendships change and your interests change. Yeah. So like acceptance is a big thing because before I even go into balance, a very important thing for you to understand, especially as you're coming into year 13 and taking the next steps for everybody. We change every day. We're constant and we change every day. But we need to recognize that people in our lives, a lot of times, know the old version of us. So in a year, like in the last 5 years, I've changed multiple times in a year because of different trials and tribulations that have come. And at times people try to hold you to a previous version of yourself, which sometimes can feel very shackled. So it's like, oh, my daughter never used to do this, but you're talking about or don't come to me and say, my son used to do this. Don't talk about me when I was 6. That's a very time ago. Those elements may still be there. Those elements about me may still be there, but the change I've developed, change always happens, regardless. And that can turn into development or change. But it's important to not allow people to hold you to your previous versions. And it's also okay for you, out of your own choice, understand that in different points of your life, an old version of you may be best suited to deal with this situation. So people sometimes will and sometimes people use it to hold you to it, or sometimes people are doing it because it's who they're used to. Let's say they were used to you always checking up on them, but that was a time where you didn't, you were a kid, you had no other responsibilities. So how do you achieve that in terms of making sure people don't hold you to your past? Now, it's very difficult. I won't sugarcoat it or any kind of thing. It's very difficult. And it depends on what aspect of your change that you're trying to deal with. Now, subtle changes is easier. Big changes, like if you're changing our entire religion, or you're coming out or doing those things, it's very hard for your immediate circle to kind of deal with that sometimes. But ultimately, you're just going to have to essentially take some control, and at some points just be able to forgive through that moment. Now, again, how you do things is more important than what you're doing, so you have to be tactical depending. So let's say if you're what's a good new person, let's say I don't know, you were used to, there's an image, let's say a dad almost had an image of you in secondary school. It was always, I don't know, let's say, for example, you prayed 5 times a day or something like that or whatnot. And then now you're in a stage where you feel like, okay, praying 3 times a day is fine. Now, one is being able to improve your communication skills. So being able to articulate yourself. 2, it depends the environment you're in and how much you can influence that, because I always have to be honest about being tactical about it. Sometimes when you want to change who you are, it's the forces around you, that's where you go to war. It's like whether it's the expectations at home or whatnot. So it's kind of like you have to play it by year depending on where you are. There's no hard and fast rule. I'll be able to give more specifics based on an example, but sometimes when people hold you to a past version, it's because they're comfortable with it. Now, an important thing to know, especially for you Nergis, is that going to uni, and this is where also the old versions of you can be held accountable, is what most people don't realize, that going to university away from home, for your parents, effectively, you're on annual leave. You're on holiday. like you go to university and genuinely speaking, the person you are in the beginning of university and the end of university are completely two different people. But when you come back home, and anybody who's gone to uni and come home can tell you, when you came home, your parents looked at you and it was almost like you were still in sixth form. And I have to be honest, especially in my view and what I've seen, it's typically worse on girls. So it's like, if it's, yeah, I just have, like I've seen, in uni, you're going out at 2 a.m., coming back 3 a.m., 4 a.m. But before your parents weren't used to that. And so coming back home, I've seen friends who were put on like strict curfews. It gets to 7, 8, and then they're running back home. Now, for me personally, how I started, I'm somewhat forward thinking. So like sixth form, what I did was, when I started to see, when I was in sixth form, I started to know that, okay, when I'm going to uni, I need to like get these guys used to me not coming home, because I'm one of those people. When I was very young, I didn't really used to go out that much. I'd be at home in the kitchen with my mom, or I'll be working with my dad building stuff. So I was pretty much at home. Brothers and sisters were the ones that are really going out to friends' houses and stuff like that. I wasn't doing much of that, to be honest. And then sixth form, I was like, nah. I know that I'm gonna need to be going out at times and take back my own time. So I just started stretching it small by small. So it's like, I'll go out and then, you get used to me coming back at 6 as opposed to 4. And it's just, maybe, obviously me, I was doing a lot of after school activities. I did a lot of sports. So they got used to me coming back at 8 or something like that. But I had a genuine reason to do it. So it now stretched their expectations of the times they're used to Ugo coming back. So Ugo's coming back at 6. We're now used to Ugo coming back at 6. You're not belling my phone that much. Then we get to like, I'm doing rugby. It's getting to like 9. You're used to Ugo coming back at that time. Then I've gone to like some events, and then it's like, okay, I purposely come back at like midnight, and then maybe I take a little bit of shouting, and then it's cool. And then I'm like, it's never going to happen again. It's going to happen again. But you get used to. So it's like, yeah. So there's 100% transition of, can I go out telling them I'm going now? But it's like stretching them. It's like you almost like got to stretch, because ultimately at the same time, people, coming out of uni, when I started Tickzon Mentorship Scheme, I found that the 3 things that matter is how you feel about yourself, where you're going, purpose, and all that kind of stuff. How you feel, how does others feel about you? Because as much as other people say, what's it called? You shouldn't care what other people think. We're in a community. Everything that we do is dependent on other people. The reason why people hire you is because of their ability to feel that they can work with you. So what other people think about you does matter. And then what's the money saying? And so changing what people think about you is hard. So stretching them is what I did. And then sometimes shocking them, sometimes, but then again, you also have to be ready for what the consequences are. But the more I did it, the more they got used to it. Then when I worked to uni, back then, man was broke. I wasn't doing no driving thing. I wasn't on no Virgin train, no Avanti train, nothing like that. Man was taking coach. So I was taking like mega bus. So all my trains were like night. So like all my buses were like nights, or like 10 p.m. or something like that. So my mom got used to me coming, and then I'm like, I gotta get the last train or the last bus. And then basically kept us pushing it to the point where, they kind of get used to that new normal, or they're tired of complaining. So it's kind of like a little battle to some extent, because coming out of university or I say to people, like, parents are good at raising kids. They're not good at making adults. And what you will find in most people's personal life is that your parents will become the final boss for you to now say, I'm now an adult. Now, obviously, the easiest ways of getting those things, depending on the home you're at when you come out of uni, is just moving out. And you'll find that they're forced to change, because parents have a situation where they also have to understand it in their point of view. There's an empty nest to this situation. Regardless of how grown you become, it's very hard for parents, particularly mothers, to deal with that transition that's or the opposite way, especially, it's very hard for them to deal with the transition of, my kids are leaving me, not just that they're growing up, but they're leaving me, or to the point where they don't need me anymore. Like that can be very tough for parents to do. And also, in a negative point of view, that's the reason why sometimes and this is why I say particularly with girls, but guys as well, that they're not outliers. They definitely get the struggle. I'm just saying, like, from what I've seen out here, sometimes they can become worse after uni than they were before uni. Because of that, they're not used to this change. She's not used to you now just going out. They're not used to you doing this thing. So then you find some dads or some moms become a bit too much. They become overbearing, but it's because they're losing control. And in those moments, the thing isn't for you to now give them more control, because you need to get them used to having less control over you. But it's very much a delicate dance. With guys, for example, okay, now you think you're grown. Some of them just slap the guy with like 10 responsibilities. And okay, here's that bill. You think you're going to be grown. You're going to be spending money in this house. And then those kind of things bring stress. So I find, this is not all parents, but this is what can happen. So sometimes what I'll do would like sit down and have a conversation with them to like set not new ground rules, but just let them understand in a way specific to that scenario. There's, that look, things, I'm different. I'm not different, but I've developed, I've changed. But it's always interesting when people talk, listen to what they're saying, because as African mums, like they're calm at this subtle manipulation thing. They'll tell you, my son that I carried for 9 months, you did there. My son that used to bring me flowers, but then what you find that when people are holding you to a previous version, they're holding you to a version that they're used to. It's like when people get back with like an ex, for example. When people get back with an ex relationship or something like that, and it's not the same, it's because they're still holding this person to what that person was in their relationship 2 years ago. That person has changed in 2 years. So it's about readjusting, and basically, I wouldn't say being unapologetic about it in terms of letting the world understand that you've changed. It's a bit of you being unapologetic, and for you sometimes to be strategically apologetic, depending on what your outcome is looking at. Because sometimes people are like, this is who I am, and that's what it's going to be, and whatnot. And then you end up in endless conflict with your family and friends because, and then you feel isolated, and you feel alone, and now you're alone in university and you're stressed. No, that's not the most productive way. That's the reason why I said, even in the emotional point of view, people would choose to have a negative relationship than no relationship at all, because loneliness is a real thing. So it's about, depending on if it's people you don't care about losing, then yeah, be unabashedly that, but it's not the most productive way to live your life, to just say, I don't care what other people think. So sometimes personally, I'd be like, okay, for example, in terms of getting out of burnout, one of the first things to do is to take a break. And I remember in university, my third year of uni, my dad slid into my DM saying I got an extra ticket to Nigeria. Don't know how you have an extra ticket to Nigeria, but God helped me out. That's all I can say. And to be honest, I'd already decided that I was going to Nigeria. From that moment that he said, I've got an extra ticket, I'm going for 2 weeks. And I was like, in my head, I'm already going. But I already know my mom and my siblings and some of my friends were up for me to be going to Nigeria at that point in time, because it's mid-season, it's semester. And so what I did at that point in time is that, in back of my head, I'm going. And this is what I mean by being strategically unapologetic and strategic apologetic. I already made up my mind that I was going, but I had to make everyone else feel like they were involved in that decision. So I went to my mom, what do you think? She was like, I don't know. I don't want it. Went to my siblings, I'm there like, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to go. Whatnot. Went to my friends, they're like, Ugo, you're mad. You're mad. How could you be going? And I'm looking at it like, I don't know. But I knew. But sometimes it's important to make people feel involved. It's important to make people feel, even if you're going to make that decision, at least having heard them out makes them feel involved. And as well, in the midst of you hearing them out, you might have heard a perspective that could have changed your mind or something like that, which has happened to me in the past. But I like to make people feel involved. And so sometimes it's like, okay, this is me, but I'm not going to be unapologetic about it. How does this affect you? And how do you feel about this? And bring them in. And just hearing them out does a lot. But then I still went to Nigeria. And to be honest, it was a big blessing. I can't lie to you. I don't regret that decision in any way, shape, or form. But then it does mean that when you make a decision, there's a Prince EA, shout out to him. But yeah, so it's important to let them be involved, because those relationships matter. So that when it comes to new versions of yourself, that keeps on changing. And so realistically speaking, it's up to you to kind of be able to control those situations. Remember, in this life, let nobody ever let you know you always have a choice. That is just the thing. And if you feel like you don't have a choice, it just means you have a hard choice. That's really what it means. All right. So in terms of getting out of burnout, so balance. So in my life, I've done a lot of things. I've done multiple. So ever since I came back to the UK, I've been working. The only time I've ever taken a break from work has been because I had no accommodation for a month. I'm ill right now, concussed, and that's pretty much it. But at all times, I've been busy, and the only reason why I've been able to get through it, and mind you, you don't have to be doing a lot to be doing a lot. I've had a lot of things going on in my life, but you can have like 2 things going in your life, and that's enough in your plate. Everything's relative. Don't go and think you're doing less because this person's carried 10 and you think you're doing more because you're carrying 1. It doesn't really make, it's just in your specific context. Now, creating balance, is first of all, trying to create a timetable that works for you. One that, balances all those 7 pillars: mentally, emotionally, physically, mentally, sexually, relationships, and all of those things. And how I do that is that for me, every birthday, friends, I'm always there. Every couple of weeks, I'll probably go to see my family. I don't really, I don't text that much, but then I call everybody at some point. In my day-to-day week, it's got work, it's got exercise fit into, it's got food, it's got my time for myself in terms of spiritual. And so, let's say me being able to do all these things, I play football every week, I'd go boxing, I'd done swimming. If I wasn't exercising, and I don't go to the gym, I just exercise outside of the gym. If I didn't do it, it wouldn't have actually helped me to balance my stress levels, because exercise is a good way of relieving stress as much as other things. Having good relationships, people that you can talk to and feel connected with, that you can joke with, that you can have times with. So regardless of how busy I am, I'm always important in making time for everything in order to make sure that one doesn't drop. And so that, creating that balance is very hard. And at some points in time, you shift to one, something's going on at home, you shift your attention more at home. Sometimes nothing's going on. You're going through a transitional change, you spend more time with yourself. Those are fine, but trying to get the balance right is important. Now, getting out of burnout, how you spend, the first thing you do when you're trying to get out of burnout is take a break. Even if you're revising, sometimes you're revising for an exam and you're just doing, you get more, you retain more information if you just took a break, took a 10-minute nap and came back and went for it. You're not being any productive by, like I said, opening up the Word document and just looking at it and trying to force yourself. You're not being productive. First thing you do is you take a break. The second thing you do is you ask for help. Now, getting out of burnout is the same things that you do if you're stressed, if you notice you're stressed, or if you find yourself overwhelmed. And overwhelmed is a bad place to be, because overwhelmed, and that's where anxiety attacks happens. That's where panic attacks happens. That's when people can feel depressed. That's where a lot of it happens, because we've let it out of control. It's like by the time you realize you're thirsty, your body's dehydrated. Like your pee is bright yellow, or is it dark yellow? And you should have been drinking water time ago. So by the time it gets to you, it can be long. So asking for help. And then after asking for help, so overwhelmed is not a place to be. When people get to burnout, that's when they become apathetic, where they just don't care no more. Like they don't really care, it don't really matter, all that kind of jazz. That's what happens when people get too overwhelmed. You don't want to be there. And so getting out of burnout, I did do a video on it, so I'm gonna try and rush through this so we can go into the finance part. But this is important anyway. So getting out of burnout. So when you're burnout, you have a lot of things on your mind. You have a lot of things going on, and the things we do is, this is called the circle of control. And then what you would do to get out of burnout, get out of stress, is you make a list of everything stressing you out. Everything, absolutely everything. You know, work, fams, friends, goal 1, project 2, church, politics within friends, family, mosque, whatever it is in the community. I'm writing this so stupidly anyway, but you write like a list and after you write the list of everything that is stressing you out, if they're big things, you need to break it down. So if it's work, what about work? Okay, let's say it's your manager, you have a project due on Saturday, you have a project due end of month. Fam, okay, brother, mom. Like you break it down and then you now have a huge list of what is, you have a huge list of what's actually stressing you out. Now, at the moment where your thing's got like 4 or 5 different, you're already too stressed. So like in uni, this will definitely happen, especially during exam season. You maybe, because of unis now are oversubscribed, they take a lot more people, more than they can handle because they like the student loan money. And so exams now exist on Saturdays when they never did. And so you could find yourself in the unfortunate position that having 3 of your important exams being Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, and Thursday morning, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that. And that's very stressful. Or you have a project due, end of final year project, whatnot. You write a list of everything that's stressing you. Then, once you've written a list of everything stressing you, you now divide the list into 2. Things you can control and things you can't control. Now, here we have something called the circle of control. So in this circle, we have control, influence, and concern. So things in our circle of control are things that we can physically control. I can open up the Word document. I can do the research. I can go out. Circle of influence. It's not really in my control, but I can talk to my mom to go talk to my brother. I can talk to this person. I have some influence in that. I can do a new policy. If this person has a shared account with me, I can cut off the accent and whatnot. Circle of concern. These are things that affect me in some way, shape, or form, but I don't have a direct influence on them. So is Boris Johnson going to be prime minister tomorrow? I don't know. It concerns me. Is Sadiq Khan going to do the ULEZ stuff? I don't know. My car is ULEZ compliant, so I'm not worried. But what's going on in the world? Is Nigeria gonna implode? Maybe, I don't know. But that, it is what it is. It's in my concern, but it's not within my control right now. Now, when you break down your list after you've broken down your list, then you've got, work, whatever, go do. Then, because remember, we're only human, we're not robots. Then you break down the list into what you can control. So let's say work, let's say fam. Now, let's say goal 1, project 2, let's say you can't control. Because let's say, but then I'll come to what you can do in that in a sec. Now, when you have this list, because our brains, this is how to trick your brain, by the way, as well. You have this list and you break it down to what you can control and what you can't control. Now, when you look at the list of what you can control, you now rearrange this list into quick wins, and then into their deadlines. So you deal with quick wins, the ones that, okay, I just, and when I say break these things down, I mean, sometimes it can take you 4 days to send an email. It can take you a year to send an email. Like break it down into tasks. Now, break down this one as well into the different tasks. Now, when you say can't control, sometimes it's like, okay, this project is, one of the persons is sick. You can't control that, but still add a deadline to this. And I'll come back to that in a sec. Now, when you have the list of what you can control, you have the list of what you can't control. We always first deal with what we can control. Now, the thing is, when you start, mind you, this is one list. And when I say list, I mean on paper. You don't need to do this on Excel. You want to have a piece of paper because the way it tricks your brain is very impressive. Now, when you have this list of what you can control, you rearrange it. Now, when you look at the quick wins and then the deadlines, you now can see that, okay, it doesn't look too scary. You've broken it down from this list. You've broken it down. It's become bigger. You separate what you can control, can't control. Now, what you need to start doing is now, and when I say quick wins, it's something that can be done within an hour. That's a quick win. You can get it done within an hour. Now, when you finish that, you come back to the list and you cross it out. Okay? Don't remove it from the list. This is why Excel is not good for this. Don't delete it off the list. Now, let's say this is when you now come and then you've done, let's say, 3 quick wins, it actually physically relieves some stress on your brain because your brain processes it as like, oh, wow, I had 6 things to do. I've done 3 things. We're making progress. But when you delete it off of Excel, your brain only sees we've got 3 things to do. It doesn't see that we had 6 things and we had the 3 things. And it's very real with that. Now, what you find is that you're stressing over things that you can't control. And then obviously it's affecting things that you can control. But what you find is that when you reduce what you can control, it now gives you space to deal with things you can't control. And so that's where you can able to go from your area of control to area of influence. So to get out of burnout, what you want to do is that, and then you now need to think outside the box. So when you now look at all these deadlines, say Saturday, end of month or whatnot, then the next thing you can do, even with like the project 2, it's like, okay, this deadline. Can I speak to the lecturer to push this on for me? Can I ask somebody to help me do this? I'm just saying, I'm not saying I would do this. Can I borrow somebody's reports to copy and see if I can, redo it or something like that? AI, ChatGPT to make it quick win. I don't know, or do the apostrophe thing and then put it in whites and so that Intuit can't, see that I did copy and paste. I'm not telling you to do that. I didn't say nothing. All I'm saying is that you got to find a way to make these things be reduced. And so being able to change those things, being able to react to those things is very important. And basically, once you do that, you will find that it will relieve the amount of stress on you and be able for you to chart a point where you come back and you're able to now gain more energy. Because when you're burnt out, you're also have a mental health scenario. Essentially, you're stressed and you're stressed out. And then in these moments, you can be very recluse. You can step back and you don't want to see anybody because there's a lot on your mind. And in these moments, it's actually very important for you to spend some time with yourself. Again, when I say spend time with yourself, I mean with no distractions. Just sit there, think, and let it flow. And it's like, okay, cool. And then you're able to now be able to conceptualize, okay, this thing is stressing me out, and you're able to deal with it. And then that's how you kind of get out of burnout, and that's how you kind of get out of stress. So anytime I notice that I'm not eating well or I'm not exercising, I know, okay, something's stressing me out. I might not 100% know what is stressing me out, but I know that I'm stressed out a bit. So I need to now go back to basics, and now I always go back, do a lot of cooking, spend some time, maybe go see a friend or whatever, do something random that's just out of the blue. Sometimes things don't have to make sense. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, cool, let's just randomly go cinema. Or, some of the times I've gotten myself out of burnout, it's like doing this, but also the combination of finding myself, I'm not bothered, do the things I'm not bothered to do. So that I'm not really bothered to go up to Enfield to go see fam. I'm going to go anyway. And then I went is it last year? Must be last year. No, yeah, last year. I was somewhat burnt out before my birthday. I had no interest in doing anything for my birthday or whatnot. And I remember I ended up taking a little break, ended up then asking, letting work know I was kind of stressed. And I ended up doing this to kind of start breaking it down. So I kind of started having some energy. Then I've now took myself out of the environment I was, where I spent some time with like different friends, different family, all random, wasn't necessarily planned. And before you know it, I had some energy to like, okay, cool. Then I had energy. I said, oh, man, let's go and do some axe throwing. And so that's how I got out of that. And ultimately, what induced my stress at that point in time was something that was more just emotional and mental that made me now get to the point where I was kind of burnt out. So these things can help you get out of it. And also within university, one of the things that most people don't know is extenuating circumstances. So when you're going through, you see some people just refer to it as EC. If you are stressed, and this is why I say you got to save yourself first before anyone can save you. If you are stressed or you're going through a mental health scenario, it's important for you to know what an EC is, an extenuating circumstances, which means that basically you are excused, or you can get a deadline moved because of it, or anything of those lights, basically. So these are one of the tools that universities have for you to manage stress and manage your mental health. Now, it's important as well because I remember when I went to uni, a girl, forgotten her name, but she was like an African, I think she was from like Tanzania or something like that. But she was telling me and a few friends about EC, and she was telling us she used it after she broke up with her boyfriend. Like it was, because it stressed her that much that what's it called? She used it when she broke up with her boyfriend. So anything that's going on in your life, you lost a family, friends, or and obviously there is some obstacles. That's why it's good to have a GP, and then they will basically what's it called? Be able to give you a doctor's note, and then you'll be able to go to your counselor, your school. They'll have like a mental health person or something like that who'll be able to help you out and help give you the EC. So if you're ever going through something in university, EC is there. If you ever have there's a lot of campuses, they have something called Good Samaritan. If you're ever feeling alone, there's numbers you can call to like speak to people. But it's very important in terms of learning this thing to make friends. It's very important for you to like go and make friends. So extenuating circumstances is one of the biggest tools you can use to manage your mental health. Now, this is the first step. Now, if you find yourself, if you have an EC with if you've suffered from mental health, whether that be anxiety, panic attacks, whatever it may be, or you're stressed or you're struggling, it's important to, tell your personal tutor, tell your department, and then also go to the student union. And then they'll be able to, you can get an extenuating circumstance. Now, there's extenuating circumstance for just one project, but it's extenuating circumstance that knows that this is an ongoing thing. During exam period, this person is typically stressed and has vagal nerves induced, so they're more likely to faint due to stress and anxiety. There's things like that, or people that are dyslexic or have a physical or hidden disability. So if you're dyslexic, you're struggling to speak, or you process information slower than other people, these are all things to raise, and they'll make reasonable adjustments for you. Now, that might mean, as I know for somebody to do, he had his exams separate from everybody else because he had social anxiety and he needed a dictaphone. So he needed to record what he was saying to listen to it. So he had extra time. So if you tell these people, they can give you extra time. And if you have it full in there, if you have like a proper EC, documented, then it means that, let's say, if you fail an exam during exam season, you're automatically put on a retake, whereas not everybody gets that. So there's some tests that you're not able to retake unless you have an EC. So extenuating circumstances is important. Obviously, Good Samaritans. If you ever think of offering yourself, I didn't know the correct word, then there's numbers to call, Good Samaritans and people like that to speak to in order to help you out with that and help you get through it. But ultimately, trying to create, and when I say balance, trying to create a community for yourself of friends, of people that you get to know. Remember, all friends started off as strangers. Even your family, friends, or whatnot started off as strangers. So ultimately, taking the leap of faith of saying hi, but also be wary of whether that person is going to make sense for you is also important. So I'm gonna let us go for like a 5-minute break before I go into finances, because there's been a lot of information dropped. But before I do that, does anybody have any questions or any any comments they want to say or anything they want to ask before I go on to finances? So I'll let you guys have a break before we do that. No? Okay. So let us take what's it called? 5 minutes. It's 12. We've covered a lot anyway, but there's still quite a bit to cover anyway, especially in the finances part. So let's say 12:20. Yeah. So that's in 9 minutes. And then if in the meantime you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. I'll address them before I continue. Or you can jump on and then let me know. So let you guys go right now, and then we'll have a break for about the next 8 minutes, and I'll be back on 12:20. Cool.